Everyone loves you. You've done so many things. But do people, like, out of all your stuff, though, do people, when you're in a hardware store, do they still do, like, all the, yeah.
That's grunt for me.
It's been only a few hours since the shocking news about Tim Allen started making waves across social media, and already fans are in disbelief. The actor, who for decades has been the face of wholesome American comedy, is suddenly at the center of a story that's turning heads everywhere. From his time as the lovable Tim the Tool Man Taylor in Home Improvement to his iconic voice as Buzz Lightyear, Tim Allen has always represented laughter, family, and nostalgia. But what's happening now is anything but lighthearted. Multiple reports have surfaced suggesting something unexpected occurred behind the scenes of his latest project, something that has the entertainment world buzzing with speculation. While details remain unclear, insiders claim this could be one of the most significant shakeups in Tim's career in years. News outlets are scrambling to confirm what really happened, while fans are left wondering if this is the moment that changes everything for the veteran comedian. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: Tim Allen's name is back in the headlines, and this time, it's not for a comedy special or a family movie. Long before the latest headlines sent the internet into chaos, Tim Allen's story was already one of reinvention and resilience. Born Timothy Allen Dick in Denver, Colorado, on June 13, 1953, he grew up in a working-class family where humor was often the only escape from hardship. But everything changed when tragedy struck. His father, a real estate agent, was killed by a drunk driver when Tim was just 11 years old. That moment shattered the innocence of his childhood, leaving behind a silence that would later echo in his comedy. His mother eventually remarried, moving the family to Michigan, but Tim never quite felt at home. It was in those teenage years, surrounded by chaos, that he discovered the power of laughter. It became his coping mechanism, his armor against pain. After graduating from Western Michigan University with a degree in communications, he drifted through various jobs, from selling sporting goods to working in advertising. But nothing could quiet the restless ambition building inside him. Then, in 1978, his life took a devastating turn. Arrested for drug trafficking at the Kalamazoo Battle Creek Airport, Allen faced the grim reality of spending decades behind bars. Many thought his life was over, another young man swallowed by his mistakes. Yet, inside those cold prison walls, Tim did something few could imagine. He turned his despair into a weapon of survival. He began performing comedy routines for fellow inmates, realizing that laughter could transform even the darkest environment. That discovery became his second chance at life. When he was released early for cooperating with authorities, he vowed to rebuild from the ground up. He hit the stand-up circuit in Detroit with nothing but determination, performing in smoke-filled clubs and tiny bars, using raw honesty and blue-collar humor to win over audiences. Slowly, his timing sharpened, his confidence grew, and soon people began to notice his brilliance. His act about tools, fathers, and family struck a nerve across America, leading to a career-defining moment in 1991, the premiere of Home Improvement. The show exploded overnight, turning Allen into a household name and earning him a Golden Globe and multiple Emmy nominations. His character, Tim the Tool Man Taylor, was flawed, loud, lovable, and real. Everything America could relate to. But his success didn't stop there. In 1994, he conquered Hollywood again as Scott Calvin in The Santa Claus, proving his ability to blend comedy with heartfelt storytelling. A year later, he voiced Buzz Lightyear in Disney's Toy Story, forever etching his voice into pop culture history. By the late 90s, Tim Allen had achieved something remarkable. He had gone from a man facing life in prison to one of the most successful entertainers in the world. But with great fame came pressure, scrutiny, and eventually, the kind of challenges that fame itself can create. For decades, he remained one of Hollywood's few comedians who could make families laugh while carrying the weight of a troubled past. And now, decades later, as the headlines once again place him under a harsh spotlight, many can't help but wonder if the same strength that carried him through his darkest days will be enough to guide him through what's unfolding right now. It all began quietly, with whispers from inside a Los Angeles soundstage where Tim Allen was filming his latest project. Crew members described an otherwise normal production day until something happened that would change everything. According to multiple on-set sources, a disagreement broke out between Allen and members of the creative team during a late-night shoot. The argument reportedly started over a script revision that Allen refused to accept, believing it strayed too far from the character he was meant to portray. Witnesses say what began as a calm discussion quickly escalated into a heated confrontation that left the entire set frozen in silence. Some say Allen's tone was firm but professional, while others claim he went too far, raising his voice and walking off set. Within hours, someone leaked fragments of the confrontation online, including an audio clip that spread like wildfire across social media. Though the authenticity of the clip remains unconfirmed, fans wasted no time speculating about what it revealed. In the recording, a man believed to be Allen can be heard expressing frustration over losing control of his work and demanding respect for decades of experience. Whether it was a passionate defense of creative vision or a moment of misplaced anger, the internet turned it into a storm. Entertainment blogs picked up the story, spinning it into headlines that suggested a full-blown meltdown. TMZ hinted that production had been temporarily halted, while others claimed key crew members refused to return to set. What's true and what's exaggerated remains unclear, but the situation quickly became bigger than the project itself. Suddenly, everyone, from veteran actors to longtime fans, was debating whether Tim Allen had crossed a line or simply stood up for artistic integrity. For someone who's always been known as a perfectionist and a professional, the allegations struck a nerve. Those who've worked with him over the years painted a different picture entirely, of a man who demands the best, who speaks his mind, and who sometimes clashes with Hollywood's newer, more corporate approach to creativity. As online debate intensified, fans began scouring old interviews for clues, pointing to moments when Allen hinted at frustration with how the industry has changed. One comment resurfaced from years earlier, when he said, "Comedy used to be fearless. Now, everyone's afraid to say anything real." That quote took on new meaning as the controversy spread. Whether this was a personal outburst or a symptom of something deeper, a veteran comic struggling to find his place in a modern, hypersensitive Hollywood remains to be seen. But one thing was certain: the Tim Allen everyone thought they knew had just become the center of a story that no one saw coming. The moment news of the alleged on-set confrontation broke, Hollywood reacted like a spark to dry tinder. Within hours, the entertainment industry's most influential voices were weighing in, and social media became a battleground. Former co-stars, directors, and even longtime friends of Tim Allen began posting cryptic messages, some defending him fiercely, others expressing concern. Patricia Richardson, who played Jill Taylor on Home Improvement, was one of the first to respond publicly. In a brief interview, she said, "Tim is passionate about his work. Sometimes that passion can be misunderstood, but he's never been anything less than professional with me." Her comment lit up timelines as fans rushed to interpret whether she was defending Allen or carefully distancing herself. Richard Karn, who portrayed Al Borland, took to social media with a simple message: "People forget that creative tension is part of what makes great TV. His post was shared thousands of times, with fans applauding his loyalty and industry insiders nodding in quiet agreement. But not everyone was so forgiving. A few anonymous accounts claiming to be former production assistants shared negative experiences, painting Allen as difficult and intense. Whether true or fabricated, these stories spread fast, amplified by blogs eager for scandal. Late-night hosts began making jokes about the incident, while entertainment talk shows turned it into the topic of the day. The divide was sharp, one side portraying Allen as a veteran fighting for integrity in an industry run by corporate suits, the other framing him as an outdated relic unwilling to adapt to modern values. What made the reaction even more complex was Allen's history of speaking his mind. Over the years, he's made headlines for expressing views that often clashed with mainstream Hollywood culture. And this controversy reignited old debates about whether he'd been unfairly targeted in the past. Fellow comedians like Jay Leno and Tim Meadows offered more nuanced takes, reminding audiences that Allen's humor and work ethic helped define an era of television. Yet others hinted that times have changed. And maybe Tim hasn't. Through it all, one constant remained. Fans refused to stay silent. Supporters flooded his social media with messages of encouragement, quoting Toy Story and home improvement catchphrases, while critics questioned whether his brand of blunt honesty still belonged in today's industry. By day's end, entertainment networks were running full-length segments analyzing his legacy, dissecting every word from his interviews, every facial expression in old footage, searching for clues about who the real Tim Allen is. And somewhere in Los Angeles, behind the closed doors of a production office now surrounded by reporters, the man at the center of it all stayed quiet. No public statements, no clarifications, just silence, and a growing curiosity about how he would respond to the firestorm surrounding him. As the Hollywood chatter intensified, the reaction from Tim Allen's fan base erupted into something much larger than anyone expected. Within hours, hashtags like #AnFeed Stand With Tim and I'll Respect the Legend began trending on X, formerly known as Twitter, while Facebook fan pages turned into round-the-clock discussion forums defending his name. Thousands of supporters flooded the internet with clips from Home Improvement, Last Man Standing, and Toy Story, calling Allen a symbol of real comedy, and one of the last old-school entertainers who never sold out. For many fans, this wasn't just about one incident. It was about everything Tim Allen represented. He was the family man, the hard-working everyman who made America laugh without needing vulgarity or shock value. They saw him as one of the few remaining voices unafraid to speak his mind, and the controversy only made them rally harder behind him. But on the other side, a growing number of critics argued that his behavior was unacceptable, claiming that his old-fashioned approach and brash honesty no longer fit the modern era of filmmaking. They cited past interviews where Allen had criticized cancel culture and claimed Hollywood had become too politically correct. These resurfaced comments reignited a firestorm of debate, with some calling him courageous for standing firm in his beliefs, and others labeling him arrogant or tone-deaf. The divide became so intense that online debates began spilling into real life. Radio hosts, podcast commentators, and morning talk shows all picked sides. One well-known entertainment journalist described the moment as a cultural Rorschach test. How you feel about Tim Allen says more about you than about him. Fans began analyzing every statement, every rumor, and even his silence, turning it into a symbol of quiet defiance. Meanwhile, longtime supporters organized online campaigns, to remind the public of his philanthropic work, his support for children's hospitals, veteran organizations, and charities for recovering addicts. They argued that one alleged outburst should never erase decades of good. But skeptics weren't swayed. "Being talented doesn't excuse bad behavior," one critic wrote, summarizing the growing sentiment among detractors who felt the entertainment industry needed stronger accountability. By the end of the week, the internet had drawn its battle lines. To some, Tim Allen was the last true entertainer standing against an overly sensitive industry. To others, he was a reminder of Hollywood's resistance to progress. In the middle of it all, Allen himself remained unusually quiet, neither confirming nor denying any of the reports. For fans who grew up watching him raise a TV family every week, his silence felt strategic, like the calm before the storm. But as support and backlash continued to grow in equal measure, one thing became obvious. This wasn't just about a TV star's argument on set anymore. It had become a cultural moment, one that exposed the deep divide between nostalgia for the past and the uncomfortable realities of modern entertainment. And in that tension, Tim Allen found himself once again at the center of America's ongoing conversation about art, freedom, and the price of speaking your mind. As rumors continued to spread, insiders began stepping forward with their own versions of what truly happened behind the scenes. And their stories painted a more complicated picture than the public had been led to believe. According to multiple production crew members, the argument that triggered the controversy wasn't about ego or attitude, but about the direction of the show itself. Tim Allen, who has always been deeply involved in shaping his characters, reportedly disagreed with last-minute rewrites that changed the tone of the entire project. The new version, he argued, turned the story into something generic and lifeless, far from the honest, working-class humor he had built his career on. He wanted heart, truth, and realism, the kind that made Home Improvement and Last Man Standing resonate for years. The younger writing team, however, pushed for a more modernized tone, filled with irony, political undertones, and edgier humor. That creative clash quickly became personal. One anonymous source claimed Allen felt outnumbered and misunderstood, while another insisted he had no problem speaking his mind when he believed a project was drifting away from its soul. During one tense meeting, Allen allegedly slammed his script on the table and said, "You're taking the heart out of it. People want real stories, not lectures." Those words, while not malicious, reportedly offended some members of the writing team, who saw it as dismissive of their work. From that moment, production meetings grew colder, and the atmosphere on set changed. Even though he's known for joking with crew members and lightening the mood between takes, insiders said Allen became more distant, more guarded. He wasn't angry all the time, one crew member shared. He just stopped laughing as much. You could tell something was bothering him. Then came the incident that made headlines, a disagreement that finally boiled over. According to an assistant director, the tension peaked when a scene Allen loved was cut without his input. He confronted the decision-makers, words were exchanged, and the rest became internet fuel. Those who know him best, however, insist that Allen's actions weren't about pride, but about principle. He's built a reputation as someone who values creative authenticity over commercial trends. And this moment was no different. He didn't want another cookie-cutter sitcom. He wanted to create something timeless, something honest. But in the new Hollywood climate, where content must cater to everyone and offend no one, Allen's approach clashed with corporate priorities. One longtime collaborator explained, "Tim doesn't play the Hollywood game. He speaks his truth, and sometimes that truth makes people uncomfortable." As more information emerged, it became clear that what the tabloids called a meltdown might have been nothing more than an artist refusing to compromise his vision. Still, the damage was done. The studio began an internal review, production slowed, and speculation filled the vacuum. What really happened wasn't just a fight on a soundstage, it was a collision between two generations of storytelling, one rooted in authenticity and another molded by image management. And as that battle played out behind the cameras, Tim Allen found himself facing a familiar crossroads. Stand down and keep the peace, or stand firm and risk everything for what he believes in. As speculation reached a boiling point, the studio behind Tim Allen's latest project finally decided to step in. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, without warning, an official statement appeared on their social media pages. It was brief, only a few sentences long, but its wording sent shockwaves through Hollywood. "We remain committed to maintaining a respectful and collaborative work environment," the post read. "Our production values the contributions of every individual involved and continues to prioritize professionalism and creative excellence." Though Tim Allen's name was never mentioned, everyone instantly knew who the statement was referring to. Within minutes, entertainment outlets dissected every word, calling it a veiled warning, or worse, a signal that the studio was distancing itself from its own star. The P2 timing made it even more suspicious. Just hours earlier, several entertainment blogs had reported that the production was temporarily paused to reassess creative direction. Some claimed certain crew members refused to return to set unless the studio took action. Others argued it was a planned hiatus, blown out of proportion by the media. Still, the public didn't buy the coincidence. Rumors spread that producers were quietly negotiating how to move forward without tarnishing the show's reputation or losing its leading man. Insiders claimed meetings grew tense as executives weighed the risk of alienating fans if Allen were pushed out. After all, his name carried decades of goodwill. And controversy or not, audiences still tuned in for him. Behind closed doors, the decision-makers faced a dilemma: silence him and risk backlash, or support him and risk internal chaos. According to one anonymous producer, everyone knew Tim's vision was right for the show, but the studio was terrified of negative headlines. They were walking a tightrope between creative integrity and corporate image. Adding to the drama, trade publications like Variety and The Hollywood Reporter began publishing conflicting narratives. One article claimed the network was considering mediation between Allen and the writers. Another suggested the show might undergo a rebranding before release to soften its tone. For fans, it became hard to separate fact from fiction. The studio's public relations team maintained an air of calm professionalism, but sources say there were deep divisions behind the scenes. One executive allegedly warned, "If we lose Tim, we lose the show," while another countered, "If we don't control the story, we lose our reputation." Meanwhile, Allen's representatives remained completely silent. That silence only fueled more intrigue. Reporters camped outside the studio gates, waiting for a glimpse of the actor, while entertainment programs ran non-stop updates like it was a political scandal. What few realized, however, was that the statement wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Because, as the studio tried to contain the fallout, Allen himself was quietly preparing a response of his own. And when he finally spoke, it would not only reignite the debate, but reveal a side of him few had ever truly seen. For days, fans and reporters waited anxiously, refreshing news feeds and social media in hopes that Tim Allen would finally say something, anything, to clarify what had really happened. Then, without warning, he broke his silence. Early in the morning, a simple post appeared on his official X account. accompanied by a black and white photo of a microphone sitting on an empty stage. The caption read, "I've spent my life making people laugh." Sometimes the truth doesn't fit the script. Within minutes, it went viral. The cryptic tone left millions guessing what he meant, and speculation surged once again. A few hours later, Allen followed it up with a longer statement, this time addressing the controversy directly. He wrote, "I've always believed that good comedy comes from honesty. It's not about politics, trends, or trying to please everyone. It's about saying something real. I've been in this business long enough to know how easily passion can be twisted into conflict. But I'll never apologize for caring about the work." Those words instantly divided Hollywood again. Supporters praised his courage, calling it a masterclass in professionalism and integrity. Critics, however, accused him of dodging accountability, saying his statement lacked an apology or acknowledgement of those allegedly affected. Yet, behind the calm tone, there was something deeper. A man defending not just himself, but the very philosophy that shaped his career. In interviews over the years, Allen had often spoken about the pressures of performing in an industry that rewards conformity over creativity. This moment, it seemed, had become the embodiment of that struggle. Within hours of posting, Allen appeared in a short video for a charity event that had been scheduled long before the controversy. Fans noticed he looked composed but weary. His usual spark dimmed slightly. When asked about the headlines, he smiled faintly and said, "You can't control what people think. You can only control how you show up." That quiet resilience struck a chord with many. News anchors replayed the clip on repeat, dissecting his expression, tone, and choice of words. Some suggested it was a subtle reminder that he had weathered storms far worse than this one. After all, this was a man who had survived personal tragedy, public scandal, and decades in the harsh spotlight of fame. By evening, public opinion began to shift again. The hashtags once filled with arguments now overflowed with empathy. People shared stories of how Tim Allen's work had shaped their childhoods, families, and even careers. Clips from Home Improvement and the Santa Claus flooded timelines, accompanied by messages like, "This man deserves respect," and "We still believe in Tim." Though the controversy hadn't fully died down, something had changed. His statement, simple yet defiant, had reminded people that behind every celebrity headline was a human being, flawed but determined. For Tim Allen, this wasn't about image management or damage control. It was about reclaiming his narrative. Whether the world agreed with him or not, he had spoken his truth, and in doing so, reignited the same raw honesty that first made America fall in love with him decades ago. In the weeks that followed his statement, the chaos began to settle. But the questions surrounding Tim Allen's future only grew louder. Would the controversy derail his decades-long career? Or would it become just another chapter in a story built on resilience? As the dust cleared, Allen quietly returned to work, determined not to let the headlines define him. Insiders say production slowly resumed after behind-the-scenes mediation, with new agreements ensuring that Allen would have more input in creative decisions moving forward. Tim wasn't looking for control, one source revealed. He just wanted to make sure the heart of the show wasn't lost. Once everyone understood that, things started to heal. Despite the turmoil, his dedication never wavered. Crew members described how he arrived early, stayed late, and even helped reset equipment between takes. Proof that, for all his fame, he still respected the craft. But the media wasn't done with him. Talk shows debated whether his reputation had been damaged beyond repair. while gossip outlets speculated about strained relationships with network executives. Yet Allen, in his typical style, didn't feed the noise. Instead, he leaned into what he knew best: work, humor, and humility. Not long after, rumors began circulating that Disney had reached out to discuss new opportunities related to the Toy Story franchise. Insiders hinted that Allen's voice as Buzz Lightyear would be returning in an upcoming project, a move fans celebrated as a symbol of redemption. At the same time, whispers emerged about a possible Home Improvement reunion, a limited series that would bring back the beloved Taylor family for one final chapter. Whether those talks would become reality remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: Tim Allen wasn't going anywhere. Away from the cameras, he focused on his family, friends, and personal growth. In interviews, he began opening up more about legacy and mortality, often reflecting on how fleeting fame can be. "You spend years chasing the spotlight," he once said, "and then one day you realize the real joy comes from the people still standing beside you when it fades." His words carried the wisdom of a man who had lived through both the heights of success and the valleys of scandal. Fans noticed a new tone in his public appearances, less about proving something, more about gratitude. He started doing smaller comedy shows again, returning to his roots in stand-up, performing in mid-sized theaters across the country where the laughter was real and unfiltered. Audiences cheered not just for the jokes, but for the man himself, the survivor, the craftsman, the storyteller who never gave up. Industry insiders began to admit what fans already knew. Tim Allen had weathered storms before, and this time was no different. His brand of humor might belong to an older era, but his authenticity still resonated in a world starved for something genuine. Even those who once criticized him began to acknowledge the truth. While others fade away under controversy, Allen endures. He rebuilds, refocuses, and reminds the world why he mattered in the first place. As one journalist wrote, "You can't cancel a legacy built on laughter, honesty, and grit." Today, Allen stands as one of the few remaining pillars of a generation that valued storytelling over spectacle. The scandal that once threatened to define him has instead revealed his depth, his humanity, and his unbreakable will. Whether he's voicing Buzz Lightyear, returning to television, or simply enjoying time out of the spotlight, Tim Allen continues to live by the same rule that saved him decades ago: keep moving forward, keep laughing, and never let the noise drown out the work. Because if history has shown anything, it's that Tim Allen doesn't fade quietly. He rebuilds, reinvents, and somehow always finds a way to take his story to infinity and beyond.